Hello, I'm Mike Cisco and welcome to the Practical IT Manager Training Series. This is training session number 45 and the title is 7 Reasons IT Managers Have the Toughest Manager Role and what you can do about it. So I'm not going to just talk about the issues, I'm going to talk about what you can do to address these issues. All right, first let me ask you a question. Are you aware that IT managers have the toughest manager role in a company? You may not be aware of that. Well, IT manager is the toughest management role in a company, and I have 7 reasons to back this up, 7 very specific reasons. I wrote a blog post about this in my CIO.com blog. The title was 7 Reasons IT Managers Have the Toughest Management Roles. So I'm putting a video together about this, but in that blog I just addressed the issues. I didn't talk about what you can do to go after and address these issues. Here's the link to the blog, or you can go to CIO.com and do a search on Mike Cisco blog and you'll be able to find all my blog posts. In this class, I'm going to discuss the 7 reasons IT managers have the toughest manager roles and what you can do to address these issues. All right, so buckle up and let's get started. Reason number 1, technology is changing rapidly. I think everybody knows that. Well, technology is changing faster than ever before. Many years ago, I don't know how many years ago it was, probably 10 or 12 years ago, I read an article that said technology has changed more in the last 10 years than in the entire history of the human race. More change in the last 10 years than in the entire history of the human race. That's a pretty daunting fact. Well, that has a major impact to IT support. In fact, you might feel like this guy, maybe you feel like you're being hit by a fire hose by all these changes that are coming at you all the time. Well, think about recent changes and their impact in your company. The cloud and software as a service. Everybody's using the cloud, software as a service. That's kind of the way people are delivering software these days. Makes it much easier for the vendor, makes it much more cost effective. And also it's a recurring revenue stream that they didn't always have in the past. BYOD, bring your own device. That places a huge impact on the IT support when everybody in the company wants to bring in their own device and they want IT to support those devices. So got to have some guidelines in terms of how you address those issues. Teleconferencing, the fact that we can do online meetings and those kinds of things today is so much easier and so much more cost effectively than what we could do in the past. It's created a whole paradigm shift in a lot of our industries, and especially had an impact on how much travel we have to do or don't have to do these days. Internet of Things and big data, that's really running in big force. It's causing a much bigger requirement for data retention and analysis and those kinds of things. So a lot going on in IoT and big data. Scanning and imaging. Eliminating paper has become a norm, not necessarily nice to have or something we'd like to have. It's becoming much more of a norm. Scanning and imaging technology is much more cost effective these days than it was even just 15 years ago. New phone technology. You're seeing how the phones are changing. Well, the phone only acted like a phone back in the early 1990s. It wasn't a full-fledged computer system like we have today. So a lot of changes are taking place in our phone technologies. And nanotechnology, maybe you're not familiar with nanotechnology. If you're not, I urge you to go to Google and do a Google search on nanotechnology. There you can find some very good videos that'll show you that. Here's one example and how I discovered it. I was flying back from Dubai one time, and I was sitting on the plane next to this guy from New York who had been there, and he was introducing nanotechnology to the taxi cab service organizations. There's 2 or 3 major taxi companies in Dubai. And when you're in Dubai, it's like New York City. There are taxis everywhere. There's not a single place you can go in Dubai and not be able to get access to a taxi very quickly because they're just everywhere. And the other thing is they all look new because they swap them out after every 3 years. So they keep them in good running order. Tourism is their number one industry, so they have very good taxi cabs. Well, this guy was introducing nanotechnology to them because what you can do is if you treat your automobile with nanotechnology or a product from this technology, basically you wash it and treat it with the nanotechnology liquid, it basically keeps that car clean for up to 5 years. In other words, dirt will not adhere to it. It falls or slides right off of it. And again, Google nanotechnology and you'll see some videos that show you exactly what that does. So there's some things that are going on that are literally creating paradigm shifts. There's technology in the works that's being developed that we don't even know about that'll be available in 5, maybe 10 years that's going to dramatically change the way we do things. For example, let me go back to teleconferencing. The fact that we can do online meetings with everyone in our organization throughout the world online and have good quality interfaces and so on, that makes a huge difference in terms of ability to communicate within companies that are distributed like a lot of companies these days are. Well, IT is impacted the most. We're impacted by far the most with all this changing technology. We have to implement the technology. We have to train both ourselves and our users on the technology in many cases, and we have to support that technology. So a lot going on when we introduce a new technology into our company. We'll consider the non-IT organizations, the accounting department, sales and marketing department, operations people. They don't necessarily have to support the new technology and so forth. They don't have to be involved. Basically, they have to learn how to use it and then they use it. They're not impacted nearly as much as we are. Even HR, human resources, they're not impacted like we are in IT when it comes to taking advantage of these new technologies. All right, they have minimal to no impact, whereas IT has significant impact. Well, the pace of technology change is going to increase in the future. It's not slowing up, it's going to increase. As new technologies are developed, it helps speed the way for newer and better technologies in the future. Well, what can you do to address this technology change? You need to read and learn, keep abreast with what's going on. You need to look for new innovations, especially as it has to do with your particular industry of the company that you're in. Join industry communities to keep up with what's going on in the industry as it relates to new technologies. Need to be open-minded to new ideas and embrace change. If you don't like change, IT is probably not a good place for you because things are going to continue to change, and those who embrace it and who adapt to it quickly are the ones who are going to be the winners in all of this. Reason number 2, it's a very tough transition moving from technical expert to manager. Most of us grew up as technical experts. We were either a software developer, we're a network engineer, or what have you, and then we got our management opportunity. So we moved from technical expert to manager. Well, IT attracts a certain personality. And our personalities in IT, if you look at all the employees in IT, from the top level manager to the lowest paid employee in your IT organization, we have very similar and very predictable personalities or behavior traits. And I've researched this for over 15 years using some tools as a CIO and then later on after that. And our personalities are, we're technically oriented, we're high detail, and we have a high sense of urgency. 90% of us have these 3 traits: technically oriented, high detail, and high sense of urgency. Well, 90%, that's pretty much everybody in your IT organization. So let's take a little bit closer look at this IT employee work behavior traits issue. 90% technically oriented self-starters. 70% and more, or just over 70%, are shy and introverted. 85 to 90% have a high sense of urgency. 90+%, actually it's about 95%, are high detail. Well, what this says is if you have a personality trait like this, which is most of us in IT, almost everybody in IT, it has this personality. Let's go do the job. Let's do it. Let's do it now. Do it my way. And I don't want to talk about it. No discussion. So let's go do it. Do it now. Do it my way. And no discussion. The let's go do it is the self-starting piece up at the top. Do it now is the high sense of urgency. Do it my way is the high detail. And no discussion is the shy and introverted trait. Well, this works great, works fine for technical experts. If I'm a software developer, I'm a systems engineer, or what have you. If I'm in the technical area, this works fine because I don't have to communicate a lot outside my inner circle, which is the IT organization. But it does not work well for IT managers. And the reason this no discussion issue, no communication, that creates a real obstacle for IT managers to be successful. To be successful IT managers, we have to communicate very well. All right, well, IT manager skills are different. They're quite different. What it took for us to be successful as a software developer is going to be totally different than what's going to take us to be successful as an IT manager. What helps you succeed as a technical expert does not always help you in a manager role. In fact, in some cases, it'll actually prevent you from being successful in a manager role. If you don't communicate well, I can assure you, you're not going to be successful in a manager role. If you don't communicate well, you can be very successful as a technical expert. I can be a very successful software developer and be the most introverted, shy, quiet person you've ever met, but I can be very successful because the coding and the programming that I do, that speaks for what I can do. As an IT manager, you have to be able to communicate. All right, it's a difference between being a doer versus a leader. Quite different. It's hard to stay technically proficient and also manage a large team. It's hard to be able to do both. Technology is changing so fast. As technical experts, maybe we were the technical expert. We were the best in that particular technology. When we move into manager, the technology is continuing to change. It's going to be difficult for you to continue to be the expert and also do what you need to do to manage and lead your team. The biggest difference is this communication skills issue. That's the big one. All right, well, communication skills as technical experts, we don't need those so much. Again, as a software developer, I don't have to communicate to a lot of people outside, maybe a business analyst, maybe a user or two on something that I'm working on. Don't have to communicate a whole lot. If I'm a systems engineer, it's even less than that probably. As IT managers, it's absolutely required. You're not going to be successful unless you can communicate successfully and effectively as an IT manager. All right, well, one of the toughest things for a new IT manager is transitioning from technical expert to IT manager. It's hard for high detail people, which over 90% of us are, it's hard for high detail people to let go of the detail. We like the detail. That's one of the reasons we got into IT. I experienced this challenge firsthand. Very difficult for me to let go of the detail and not want to continue doing detail IT work. I hear about it all the time. I see others struggle with it. This is a big challenge. This can be the biggest challenge that you might experience, moving from technical expert to IT manager. Well, what can you do about that? Well, you need to focus on management. What does it take to be a successful manager? And you need to invest in manager skills. Things like training, management resources. You need to find some management resources that help you be a better manager, a stronger manager. And you need to find some mentors, people that have done the job and are successful in management that you can look to, ask questions, and so forth. Let me give you an example. My first IBM manager, and I've shared this in some other classes, when I moved from the SC, IBM Systems Engineer ranks, to IBM Marketing Rep, he told me when I was leaving, moving in from his organization to another manager, he told me, he says, when you move into this new organization, you need to focus on marketing. You need to focus on what it takes to be a successful marketing rep, not an SE. You're very good as an SE, But you got to focus on marketing, because if you don't, you won't be successful in this new marketing role. Well, the same thing occurs when people move from a technical expert role into IT management. You've got to focus on management as opposed to being the technical expert that you were and what you liked doing in the past. It's difficult, but you've got to be able to do that. So that's why that item is listed first on this page. Well, one of the things that I offer is my IT Manager Institute. If you look at this link below, itmanagerinstitute.com, at this site, I have a tremendous amount of resources that I've developed over the years devoted to helping IT managers of the world achieve more success. Things like training, like this class that you're seeing right now, IT manager resources, books, tools, executive reports, and so on, coaching, consulting, and so on. Thousands and thousands of IT managers around the world are using some of my resources. Some are using a lot more resources, some are using only maybe a book or two. But thousands of IT managers around the world are using these resources. This site is dedicated to helping IT managers of the world achieve more success. That's what it's all about. All right, reason number 3, delegating and depending upon others is a new challenge. It's something we haven't done before as technical experts. It's extremely difficult to move from doing things yourself. Think about this. When you're a technical expert, your success is based upon what you do, and you're very comfortable with that. Now all of a sudden you're moved into the management ranks and you've got to depend on somebody else to get the things done. That's very uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. So move from doing things yourself to depending upon others is a huge challenge. Success as a technical expert is based upon what you do, like I just said. Well, IT manager success is based upon what you can get other people to do, the IT people in your organization, customers to work with you, and so forth. Well, this lack of control is a major challenge, and the reason we like this control is because we're so high detail. High detail people tend to be very control oriented. We like to be in control of our own destiny. Well, when we have to delegate and depend upon others to get things done, that's a lack of control, and that creates a major challenge. What worked for us before does not necessarily work any longer, so it puts us in an uncomfortable position. It's a dynamic that can be a true shock to your system, a real shock to your system. And it's especially difficult for a new manager, someone who's a manager for the very first time. And if you're promoted from within, the work pool just decreases. Think about this. Let's say you're in a group of software developers. There's 10 programmers. Well, if you're the very best programmer and they promote you to the programming manager, well, you just remove 10% of the work pool from that work group. And maybe it's a little bit more than 10% if you were the very best. Well, that just decreased. Well, what that can do is that can create some productivity loss if you're not able to fill your productivity gap very quickly. And even if you replace yourself with someone, if you were the very best, that person that comes in is not going to be the very best immediately. So you're going to have some productivity loss once they move you out of that work pool. When that happens, client satisfaction is impacted somewhat, and that can actually create a client satisfaction problem. And if it does create a client satisfaction problem, senior management starts getting concerned. So your promotion can actually start a ripple effect that can create some challenges for you in this new manager role. Managing peers is a huge challenge. Let me see if I can highlight this another way. Managing peers is a huge challenge. IBM, everybody knows that IBM stands for International Business Machines, right? Well, I'm going to tell you that's wrong. If you're an IBMer, like I was for 5.5, 6 years, if you're an IBMer, you know that IBM stands for I've been moved, I'm being moved, or I will be moved. And the reason for that is because they did not want you managing your peers. IBM understood how difficult that was. So if you get into a management role and your career is moving up the ranks in management, about every 2-3 years, they move you from one position to another. One of the reasons that I left IBM was because I got into the management role, or was headed that way, and I didn't want to have to uproot my family and have to move every 2 or 3 years, because that's what was going to happen if I was successful. And the reason they did that is they did not want you managing your peers, because they knew how difficult that was. We'll touch on that again in a second. And the last thing is, most young managers are not prepared to manage and delegate. When they get into a management role, unless they've been developed and groomed to be managers, they're not prepared to manage, and they're especially not prepared to delegate, because they've been doing things themselves to be successful. All right, well, what can you do to address this delegating issue? Stop trying to do things yourself. Now, that's going to be hard. That's going to be very hard for you, but stop trying to do things yourself. You want to get your people to do those things. You want to build a capable team, empower your employees to own things, and help your employees succeed. Focus on helping your employees succeed. So your focus needs to be more in the area of planning, organizing, and communicating. That's where you need to be spending your time, as opposed to actually doing things technically that you're probably so comfortable doing because you just got through doing that and had a successful career at it as a technical expert. Reason number 4, IT employees are harder to manage. I love this graphic right here. IT employees are harder to manage. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think IT employees are different? Well, I can tell you they're very different. IT employees are uniquely different than other employees in your company. If you don't believe they're different, go ask your CFO or your CEO or a business manager if they think IT employees are different. They'll tell you real quickly, yes, they're different. I don't even understand what they're saying half the time. IT employees are different. All right, well, think about something. IT employees know more about the technology they're working on than you, their manager, know about that technology. For example, I came up on the business application side. I don't know how to configure routers and switches and all that thing. Could I learn how to do that? Sure, I could. But I don't know how to do work in the infrastructure side. So I have to find someone that I can depend upon to help me understand what the needs and the issues and the risks are in those areas. I've got to have a technical expert that I can rely on to help me do that. IT employees invariably are going to know more about the technology that they work on than you, their manager. Now, that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. But it makes it more difficult for you to manage your employees. It's not like this in other organizations. Let's look at a couple. Sales. In the sales organization, the sales manager was probably one of the best salesmen in the organization. He knows how to sell business, and he's very good at it. In fact, when you need assistance as a salesman to close a big opportunity, they usually bring in that sales manager to help fine-tune and close that deal. So the senior sales manager is probably one of the best salespeople in the organization. Accounting. Your CFO. Your CFO knows as much or more about that chart of accounts in the accounting system because he created it, he designed, and he defined what those chart of accounts were going to be than anybody. The accountants don't know as much about that chart of accounts as he does because he was instrumental in developing those chart of accounts, what the revenue items are, what the expense items are, and so forth. And when you produce the P&L report, the balance sheet reports, and those kinds of things, he understands the numbers as well or better than anybody in his organization. Well, that's not true in the IT side. In the IT side, I don't know infrastructure. And in fact, I don't know how to program anymore, okay? Because it's been so long since I was able to do that. I wouldn't be able to do that very effectively. My people know a whole lot more about those details and those technologies than I do. Operations, it's the same thing. Your operation managers tend to know as much about the operations as anybody in those operations, the lower people. Well, IT employees are smart. They want to do the work themselves. They like to do it their way, and they don't communicate very well. Well, guess what? These are not teamwork traits. Working independently, doing it your way, and not communicating, those are not teamwork traits. What you've got to do is, as the manager, you've got to create the teamwork. Teamwork's not going to happen unless you, the manager, make that happen. So managing IT employees is harder than it is managing other employees, I think. It's a little bit more difficult. And again, I touched on this earlier. If employees were your peers, it makes it tough. The dynamics change immediately. Let's use an example. Let's say I'm one of 10 software developers, and I get promoted to programming manager. So the 9 people that I was a buddy with on Friday, I come in Monday, now I'm their manager. I'm not their peer, I'm their manager. Well, the dynamics change immediately. I haven't changed. They haven't really changed, but they treat me differently than they did last week. Last week, they would have shared and talked and discussed pretty much anything with me. Monday, when I come on board and I'm their manager, they're not going to be quite as open because there's some level of risk associated with sharing anything and everything with their manager as opposed to their peer. All right, so the dynamics change immediately whether you like that or not. That's one of the reasons IBM did not want people managing their peers. There's a lot of other reasons, but that's one of the big reasons. Dealing with a problem employee is a new challenge. Maybe you've never dealt with a problem employee. If you have a problem employee, there's a process that I can take you through, shows you how to do that. In fact, I've got a class devoted to that. Dealing with a problem employee is a new challenge that you've got to learn how to go through. Well, learning on your own can be difficult. It's much easier to learn how to do that if you've worked with someone who's gone through those issues and has experience with those kinds of issues. New managers also don't know how to motivate. Motivation doesn't happen automatically. My belief is people are innately motivated within. They just don't realize they're motivated, especially IT people. IT people tend to be cynical, they tend to be analytical. They don't necessarily know they're motivated. As the manager, it's your job to bring that motivation out and get them pumped up and ready to go and achieve great things. All right, so you need to learn how to motivate. Well, what can you do to address this managing IT employees? Well, you need training. And one of the things that I've done is I've developed a lot of classes on this, in this particular series. Classes like Understanding IT Employee Work Behavior, Coach Employees the Fundamentals of IT Support, IT Staff Motivation and Development, Holding Effective IT Staff Meetings, Dealing with Problem Employees, IT Manager Foundation. All of these classes touch on things that you need to do to be able to motivate, develop, coach, manage employees, specifically IT employees, better. Reason number 5, no one around to help an IT manager. See this guy sitting on the bench by himself? That's what it looks like when we're in trouble as an IT manager. There's nobody around to help you address your issues. This is especially true if you're a CIO in a small company. There's nobody around that's going to be able to help you. IT is not a company's core competency, and that's part of the reason why there's nobody around. IT or technology is not the company's core competency. If you're in the banking business, it's providing and delivering banking services. Now, do they use technology? Yes. But technology is not the core competency. It's banking services is what the core competencies are. If you're in the hospital business, it's providing patient medical services. Do they use technology? Sure. They use a lot of technology, but they only use that to provide patient medical services. The technology is not their core competency. And manufacturing, it's making widgets. It's not technology. Well, business managers in these industries, they can't help an IT manager. They don't know what's going on in IT. They don't understand IT. They don't understand IT employees. Business managers can't help you. The example I always give in my IT Manager Institute program is this grocery store chain. We have 300 stores in a large grocery store chain. And we've got one store, store number 160, they're in trouble. In every store, there's one person who's responsible for that store's performance. That's called a store manager. And that store manager is responsible for the financial performance of the store, the cleanliness of the store, client satisfaction, employees, hiring and firing, all those kinds of things, keeping the parking lot clean, security, all those things. That store manager is responsible for each of those aspects for that particular store. Well, we've got store number 160. They're in trouble. They're not making their numbers. They've got client satisfaction problems. The complaining about the produce is not fresh. The store is not clean. Those kinds of things. Well, here's the question. Is there anybody in this organization that can go in and look at store number 160 and make a recommendation on what we need to do to turn this situation around? Well, the answer is sure. Absolutely. There's 299 other store managers that are doing a good job. I'm sure we can go find us 2 or 3 very good candidates to go in and do an assessment on that store and give us a recommendation on what we need to do to turn that store around. And that may be to fire that manager and get another one because he or she just cannot do the job. Or it may be to tweak some things to address a few issues. All right, but there's 299 solid performing store managers in our organization. And if you look into our headquarters, what did the people in our senior management positions in our headquarters do before they became executives? Right, they were store managers. Our business, our management team in this company, we understand managing grocery stores. That's our core competency. We understand that very well. So there's all kinds of resources that can go in and help this store manager of number 160. There's no question in my mind we can get that turned around. All right, let's take another example. The CIO of the company's in trouble. Do we have anybody who can go help the CIO? And the answer is no. Senior management can't help. There's nobody around who can help them. The department managers or the store managers, they can't help the CIO because they don't understand IT and they don't understand IT people. They don't know what an IT organization should or should not be doing to be successful. So there's nobody around. If the CEO can't help IT and department managers can't help you, what do? You're forced to figure it out yourself. Well, that's not good. That's a high-risk situation. What does the CEO do with a struggling CIO in his organization? What does this store executive do in this grocery store chain? What does he do to fix his CIO problem? Well, he does one of 3 things. He fires the CIO and hires a new one. He brings in a consultant to help him assess what needs to be done, or he invests in training that CIO to bring him up to speed. What usually happens is they either fire and hire a new one or bring in a consultant. And the reason, because it takes a lot more time to invest in training, and that CEO doesn't know how or where to provide that training to help his current CIO. So what usually happens is they fire the CIO, go find a new one, or they bring in a consultant. Happens a lot. Well, what you can do but to address this no one around to help is take a look at my IT Manager Institute again. And I keep referring to that because all of these resources are geared to help you develop the skills and the insight and the knowledge that you need to be able to be a successful IT manager. My Gold member program specifically devoted to IT manager development, just like this training class you're watching right now and all the other training classes that I have in this series. Reason number 6, IT must understand the needs and issues of all company departments, not just IT. Let me re-emphasize that. IT's got to understand the needs and issues of all company departments, not just IT. IT is the only department required to understand the needs and issues of every company department. Every company department, not just IT. And the reason for that is we've got to position IT to support the business. If you don't know the needs and issues of the HR department, you can't support the HR department. If you don't know the needs and issues of the operations department, you may not be able to support the operations side. And the reason for that is a lot of their objectives and the things that they're trying to do require the use of technology to do their jobs and to do new projects and those kinds of things. So IT is usually the one who's got to support those technologies. It puts extra pressure on the IT manager, a lot of extra pressure. Let me give you two examples, two real examples. I've been involved in 45 company acquisitions where our company purchased another company. Well, in those, I did the IT due diligence part. Well, when we're doing an acquisition, we send out a request list that includes IT requests for information, marketing requests for information, operations, accounts receivable, HR. All the departments have a short request list of what we want to look at before we do our on-site discovery, before we go visit the company. And part of that is to do research so that we can come up to speed on what's going on in this company as much as we can before we go on site and start doing interviews. Well, we get all these boxes, and there are boxes and boxes and boxes. What I do is I go look at my IT boxes first, and I look at the information that I've requested. But then I go and look at the list of contents of all the other departments' boxes, because there may be something in there that I need to go look at to determine if there's IT support implications associated with it. It could be a new project that they're working on. It could be a lot of different things. Now, I don't look at the payroll list and the salary list and all those kinds of things. I don't need to see that. But if there's some kind of project being anticipated or underway currently to address something, to improve productivity, to reduce costs, I'm going to go look at that and try to understand that as well, not just the IT information. Second thing, when I join a company as a new CIO, and I've joined companies as a new CIO in a couple different fashions. In one case, it's joining the company as a new CIO employee. In a couple of cases, I've joined a company as an interim CIO, as a consultant, to help start managing their IT organization and help them find a permanent CIO. So I've been involved in several scenarios with this. Well, when I join the company, whether it's as a consultant or whether it's as a full employee of the company, the first thing I do is I do an IT assessment. Well, I spend the bulk of the time and the early part of that assessment interviewing department managers, trying to understand their needs and issues. I do that before I go to IT and try to understand IT support issues. I've got to know what the needs and issues are of the business before I can even look at the IT organization. I have to understand the need, the demand for IT support, and then I have to look at IT to understand the capacity and the capability of what we can do, the supply. So I've got to look at the supply and demand. Got to look at the demand first so you understand what IT needs to be able to do to support the business. This requires IT or a CIO to understand key aspects of each business unit. And every business unit has different issues, different sets of needs and issues when it relates to IT support. So when I'm going through an IT assessment, I'm interviewing people and I'm looking at documents and I'm reviewing things. I'm trying to understand the business and understand the needs and issues of that business. And as I'm doing that, I'm interpreting those things as to whether or not they have IT support implications. I discuss all this in my training class and in my books that deal with IT assessment, IT due diligence. This also places more emphasis on communication skills because you have to communicate a lot with the customer outside of IT. So what can we do to help this understanding the needs and issues part? Well, there's a training class that I have in this particular series called IT Assessment, the Key to IT Success. And there's a book that I have that talks about the process and the tools of IT due diligence, which is the same thing as an IT assessment. The only difference between the two is IT due diligence is organized around a company acquisition, as opposed to IT assessment. It could be you're doing a general IT assessment when you join as a new CIO of a company. All right, reason number 7, communication challenges. IT people do not communicate well. I should probably highlight that again. IT people do not communicate well in general. And part of the reason for that is over 70% of us are shy and introverted. Well, there's 2 traits of shy people. Number 1 is we tend to be poor communicators. And the reason for that is if you're shy, you don't view communication as that important. So you probably do not invest in your communication skills. I was lucky. In my early IT days, I joined IBM. In IBM, they develop your communication skills because they know how important it is for your job in IBM. I was forced to go through training, through role plays, through a lot of training and education to develop my communication skills. Well, most IT managers and most IT people, they don't get that kind of investment in their communication skills. There's a good chance, if you're watching this, you have poor communication if you're a shy and introverted person, like over 70% of us are. And the second reason is if you're shy and introverted like I am, you have a lower desire to communicate. Shy people just do not think communicating is all that important. Now, extroverts, they get energized by communicating. They love to communicate. That's what they live for. All right, so we have a lower desire to communicate. Those are 2 big issues, and those are not problematic for technical experts, but they're very problematic for IT managers once you move into the management ranks. So you've got to address these 2 issues when you move into the manager ranks. We are comfortable communicating within our inner circle. Well, guess who that is? That's the IT organization. That's people that you work with. Well, guess who's outside our inner circle? Outside that are department managers and their employees, called users, and the senior management team. These are clients. I put clients into 2 scenarios: department managers and users, and senior managers. Well, if they're outside our inner circle, we're not real comfortable communicating with them unless we learn how to. IT has a big reputation for being poor communicators. We're a 1-star at best in most organizations, and I continue to see this, especially in the small and mid-sized companies. I've been involved in quite a few. Poor communication is a big issue. Well, communication, it's one of the biggest concerns of IT clients. And your IT clients, again, are 2 different groups: senior management team and the department managers and their employees or users. Well, what can you do to address this poor communication issue? Learn what to communicate, learn how to communicate, create processes that literally force you to communicate. And there's some classes that I have: running effective meetings, IT communication, dealing with problem clients. So there's training available to you within my series and outside. You don't have to just look at what I've got. There's a lot of training and things available to you if you look for it. All right, we talked about 7 reasons IT managers have the toughest manager role. Technology is changing rapidly. It's only going to change faster than ever in the future. It's a tough transition moving from technical expert to manager. Delegating and depending upon others is a new challenge that we have to learn. IT employees are harder to manage. They know more about what they're working on than we do. Not true in other organizations. There's no one around to help an IT manager who's in trouble. IT must understand the needs and issues of all departments, not just IT. And communication challenges create real obstacles for IT managers, so we have to address this issue and become great communicators. All right, let's summarize. IT managers have the toughest manager role, and I identified 7. You need to be aware of them. You need to invest in yourself. You need to invest in your knowledge, resources that you have access to help you do your management role much more successfully or effectively. You want to take advantage of other managers' experience. Find a good mentor or two or three. All of these things can help you address this issue. Bottom line, just because IT management is tougher does not mean that we cannot excel in it. We should excel in it, and we can. The key is having the knowledge and the resources and then gaining the experience. And one place where you can get the resources and also the knowledge is at my itmanagerinstitute.com website, where it has a host of resources, training, coaching, books, tools, all kinds of things available to help you achieve more success. All right, if you're interested in monthly IT manager training like this one, take a look at my member programs. My Platinum member is by far my best value. It gives you access to everything that I have. Plus, I deliver 2 new classes like this every month, and there's over 100 archived recordings. You can take a look at it at itmanagerstore.com/member. All right, I want to thank you and wish you the best of success. If you're looking for more practical IT manager resources, take a look at my website, itmanagerinstitute.com. In addition, I've got a new YouTube site called IT Manager Institute channel. Take a look at that, and I'll be adding new classes and that on a regular basis in the future. Thanks again. I hope this material has been helpful, and I wish you the very best of success.